Do do do, theme song. Do do do, I'm broke so this is my theme song. Do do do, just imagine this is an awesome theme song. Do do, theme song. Hello, welcome to Left of the Box News Bites. Bonjour, bienvenue. I'm Sandy. I meant to get this recorded last Wednesday morning, but this is what the hall of my building looked like at the time. Random power outage, making it seem like the zombies were about to attack. Nothing spooky about this at all. I'm sure the sound of footsteps coming up behind me is nothing to worry about. But the timing worked out. Later that day, something happened, which is a big announcement that I'll tell you about at the end of this video. Yeah, I did it, that whole hook thing, hooked and stay till the end, because, I'm a real YouTuber. Okay, on to the video at hand. CERB, the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, keeps trending, even though it ended in September of last year. Why is this? Maybe it's because for a short while some folks didn't have to live in anxiety-driven fear of how they would pay for rent. Or maybe it's because once people got a taste of what a guaranteed livable income would be like and realized it was possible for the government to do, they started to push back on the status quo. And maybe, just maybe, it's because once people weren't forced to work at jobs that underpaid and treated them poorly, and they had free time to spend with loved ones and pursuing activities that brought joy to their lives, they understood this greedy capitalist system was robbing them of quality of life. There has to be more to life than working to pay for bills. But as I explained in my video, Canadians did not get $2,000 a month, linked below. Not everyone benefited from CERB, and it ended up actually hurting a lot of people. And people who have had to rely on the CERB, the follow-up to CERB, to get through this ongoing pandemic, have now lost the lifeline that has been keeping them afloat. Making these videos has added to the quality of my life, so please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Follow me on Twitter so long as it's not a detriment to the quality of your life, and if you can, become a patron. Every little bit helps, link in the description box below. CERB did benefit a lot of people, and for that, I'm grateful. I'm truly glad most people were able to get through part of the pandemic without losing their home or going hungry. But here's a rundown as to how it didn't help everyone and hurt others. People were led to believe that you could simply call a number and get $2,000 deposited into your bank account every month, and technically that was true. However, not everyone qualified for CERB, and people weren't means tested before being given the money. If it turned out later you didn't qualify, you had to pay the money back. This meant that people who took it in good faith but didn't qualify were now thousands of dollars in debt. To qualify, you had to have lost your job because of COVID. So if you were unemployed beforehand and couldn't find work because everything was shut down, you were SOL. You also had to have made $5,000 the previous year net. That wasn't made clear at first, so people who made under $5,000 net but over $5,000 gross were told they had to pay it back. Luckily, there was enough of an outcry that the government backed away from demanding it. But this meant that people who knew it was net and didn't apply for it because they made under $5,000 net but over $5,000 gross lost out on money they probably desperately needed. People on disability, CPP, or other government programs were not allowed to collect it despite us being forced to live on roughly half of that per month. Justin Trudeau said $2,000 was the bare minimum needed to get by, but he left out, only if we deem you worthy. Most government programs won't allow you to collect money from more than one program at a time and will deduct dollar from one if you do so. So people on disability who unfortunately thought the government was looking out for them and got CERB received nothing the following month from disability and were left with no money to pay for rent. Folks on disability or CPP who have to hold down jobs to make ends meet but lost their work during the pandemic were left surviving on less because of this. Unlike most government programs, CERB was a taxable income that was not taxed at the source, which is why I say no Canadian got $2,000. Folks had to set aside part of that $2,000 for taxes. So for the people unaware of that, come tax seasons, they've had the shock of learning they were hundreds or thousands of dollars in debt to the government that gave them this money in the first place. But the government decided to be kind and said they would give folks a year to pay it back before putting interest on it. After CERB ended, it was transitioned into the Enhanced Employment Insurance called Canada Recovery Benefit, CRB, which paid out less and was harder to get. Okay, I think that's everything, but go watch my video on it to be sure. Before I go on, I need to make a correction. In my last video, I called out David Dole and Lance from the Serfs, even though I greatly admire and look up to the two of them, for going on to American shows and making it sound like CERB was a wondrous thing that saved all Canadians. After watching the clips again, I realized I was wrong, and I'd like to offer a sincere apology to David. Here's the clip from his appearance on TYT.
If you look around the world, other countries, they actually, for the most part, took better care of their people. It wasn't perfect. Canada had $2,000 a month for most people who lost their job or were impacted by the virus.
As you saw, he kept it short and was correct in saying most people, and that it was in relation to losing your job because of COVID. I don't mind that he didn't go into detail or mention anything about the plight of folks with disabilities. He was on TYT to talk about American issues. It's not on him to represent all Canadian perspectives. That's why it's so important we have a diversity of voices speaking up. Had I been on, I would have mentioned that Canada has a population of 38 million, yet millions of people, many of them with disabilities, were left to fend on their own during COVID. But I would have never been able to talk about the American topics he covered as well as he did. Okay, so how about Lance? Here's the clip of his appearance on the Majority Report.
Jagmeet Singh and the NDP, they're basically the lefty party in Canada. They're the workers' party. They're typically very for unions, worker cooperatives, increasing pharmacare rights, dental care rights, stuff like that, stuff that all lefties kind of get on board with. They were the ones who pressured Trudeau and said to Justin Trudeau, hey, by the way, you need to enact this program. Canadians are going to need some form of a UBI to get us through this. That became what was known as CERB. So under that program for about 7 to 8 months, any Canadian who wanted would just log into a website. You wouldn't have to go through any vetting process. You just click I agree, and you would get $2,000 in your bank account every month while COVID was going down. And obviously, it was incredible, saved a lot of lives. I had a lot of friends who were on it. And it was necessary because how else are you supposed to spend hours at home not working and also buy food and pay rent, right? It doesn't work out. So that was an enormously popular program.
Congratulations, Lance. You effectively maple washed CERB. Sorry, but I'm not apologizing. Wait, did I just... Anyway, on October 23rd, the CRB was ended. Not only that, but the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, CREWS, and the Canada Emergency Rent Subsidy, CERS, have also come to an end. A new benefit will come into effect, but is only available during lockdowns, which is currently happening nowhere. Also, provincial governments tired of this pesky pandemic are more reluctant to lock down, which means people will be forced to go back to work even if they don't feel the workplace is safe from COVID. There are a few more benefits that will be put into place which will cost roughly $7.4 billion, but nothing near enough what is needed to get folks who are struggling back up and going. And if that $7.4 billion sounds high to you, just remember, the federal government has spent $77 billion for 88 fighter jets, $286 billion for 15 warships, and $750 billion of liquidity supports for a handful of banks. They have the money to do what is needed to help lift everyone out of poverty. They're choosing not to. The government can't just will the economy to a better place. There's a wonderful article in Passage about why ending CRB now is cruel and uncalled for, written by Taylor Scalone, linked below. I strongly suggest you give it a read when this video is over. He explains it well, in far fewer words than I would have used. Adding to the list of people hurt by accepting pandemic benefits are seniors who receive GIS. That's the Guaranteed Income Supplement. Remember what I said earlier about CERB being a taxable income? From CBC. Almost 90,000 seniors facing guaranteed income supplement cut for accepting pandemic benefits. So the seniors are being hit by a sudden cut to their monthly income because they accepted federal finance benefit that was supposed to help them weather the pandemic. Low-income seniors who received the Canada Emergency Response Benefit are seeing their guaranteed income supplement clawed back as a result. GIS is intended to help low-income seniors make ends meet. The payments are based on income. A single senior earning less than $19,248 qualifies for GIS. The maximum monthly payments under the program is just around $950. Janet is one of the low-income seniors who works part-time to support themselves, and she previously received $300 a month through the program. She said she was told in July that because she accepted several payments of the $2,000 monthly CERB, which is taxable income, all her GIS payments for the year would be canceled. All of them. I'm in perpetual struggle, she said, so to cut back $300 a month is very difficult paying rent and taking care of my other expenses, which are very modest. So some people are asking for special consideration for seniors because many of them didn't know this was going to be an issue when they got CERB during the pandemic. And it's just really a mess because when it comes down to it, seniors don't get enough money to live to begin with, because when you get CPP, your drug plan changes and most medications are not covered anymore unless you give money to other programs. And some people just simply can't afford that. And like most people, it's not like most people who had to take CERB, when they got the money, they spent it. They spent it on the things they needed, like rent or groceries, or maybe, a new bed because the old one was hurting their back, or medications, or some sort of brace for their arm that wasn't covered. All sorts of things. The money goes away because they're in such a desperate need and need to get caught up. So to expect them to put a portion of that aside, especially when they didn't know they needed to, is unrealistic, and it's cruel, because people on CPP, seniors who need GIS, people on disability, people on other social assistance programs don't get enough to survive. And this is horrible, because if you're a senior and you're facing eviction, it's hard enough for a young, healthy person to survive in the shelter system and on the streets. How do you expect a senior to do that when they don't know the systems, they don't know technology as well, they don't know how to reach out for help? And there was this tweet sent out by an MP. With the cost of living skyrocketing, the Trudeau government has set its sight on targeting seniors who are struggling to get by. Seniors on fixed incomes are most vulnerable to the inflation crisis caused by this government. We need to stand up for our seniors. And that was tweeted out by Aaron O'Toole. That feels... How is it he's expressing more compassion than the Liberals? Unless, of course, he's lying about his empathy to pander to his base. Oh, whoa, the Liberals and Conservatives really are the same party. Another reason CERB keeps trending is because of businesses complaining they can't get enough employees to fill all the jobs. Of course they blame CERB for keeping people away from working for a living, even though the full program hasn't been active for over a year. On CRB, the max you could get was $600 every 2 weeks, and if that pays them enough to not want to work, maybe try increasing hourly wages. Oh, and adding benefits, stable hours, and respect. Business owners are frustrated because even with CERB over, people still aren't wanting to go back to their shitty jobs. Some owners get that during the lockdown, it gave folks time to think about or work towards going into a career that they would find more fulfilling. But the coffee won't serve itself, and it's not like the owners would ever take on washing the dishes. And there's business owners like Regan Steinberg who said, "It's a generational thing. When I came out of culinary school, I went to get my first job and they offered me whatever they offered me. I was like, I will work for whatever. I just wanted the experience. I'd stay late. I'd volunteer. Now there's this kind of entitlement. I guess it's good in the sense that they're trying to get their worth, but it's about doing the least and getting paid the most. Everyone wants to get paid more, but as soon as we want to charge more for food services, we get completely bombarded with negative Google reviews. Yeah, it's good folks want to be paid their worth. Do you know what else folks want? A wage that allows them to afford to live in the same city they work in. And it's about doing the least and getting paid the most is some serious projection. Businesses are constantly looking for ways to exploit workers to get more profit. And it's not entitlement to want a job that pays a living wage, treats you like a human, and adds some level of meaning to your life. You want to know what entitlement looks like? The House hasn't been in session since June 23rd. And remember that election Justin Trudeau called because it was so important to get so much done? Well, the House doesn't go back in session until November 22nd. Here is a Parliament calendar for 2021. See that? The filled-in squares? 96 of them? That's when our government was working. During a pandemic, housing crisis, climate crisis, people suffering with poverty. That is when they were working. MPs get paid $185,800 a year. Trudeau gets $357,800. For doing what? Then calling an election that costs $610 million and you call a person wanting to make enough to pay for basic needs entitled? Really? How about you try working for the same wage and benefits you give your employees, then try telling me how entitled they are. Speaking of wages, Doug Ford has announced he's going to raise Ontario's minimum wage to $15 an hour. Keep in mind, one of the first things he did as Premier was to scrap the legislation that would have pushed the minimum wage up to $15 back in 2018, which means without other increases taken into account, minimum wage workers have lost out on about $5,300. Also keep in mind, $15 is not a living wage. It hasn't been for a while. Another thing to keep in mind, he's only doing this now because there's a provincial election next year, and he's hoping you've forgotten about the first thing I asked you to keep in mind. And of course, businesses are complaining, saying they haven't recovered fully from COVID, and the increase from $14.35 to $15, which is 65 cents an hour per employee and works out to $26 for a 40-hour work week, will bankrupt them. I'll be honest with you. I don't think all small business owners are bad people. I don't think all of them exploit their workers. They're just trying to get by themselves. I know some who have put in lots of work to keep their businesses going and pay their employees a good wage. Small businesses are nice because you get to develop a relationship with the folks who work there and they add something unique to the community. The government should be helping them through tough times. I also think that if a business can't afford to pay people living wages, then it's not a viable business. Another thing I think is that even if there wasn't a pandemic hurting businesses, they'd still be complaining about the increase, claiming it would wreck them, like they've done every other time there's been an increase in the minimum wage. COVID is just a convenient excuse for them. Speaking of Doug Ford, when we get closer to Ontario's election, I'll be making a series of videos called Ford Bites. They'll be quick 1 to 3 minute long videos. Yeah, me, 1 to 3 minute long videos. Anyway. Reminding people of the horrible things he's done. There's a lot of material to work with, so I'll be able to put together a bunch of them. I need your help to spread them far and wide. I'm putting together a list of people to tag as soon as a video drops so they can like and retweet it for maximum reach. I'm hoping to have at least 100 folks willing to be a part of this. If you would like to be tagged, please tweet at me and let me know. Once you've indicated your interest, you don't need to a second time. I'll be sending out tweets asking people to be part of this project, so no need to reply to every one of them. I can't change the world, but together we can. Let's get Ford elected out. Oh, and speaking of horrible conservative premiers and minimum wages, Tim Houston of Nova Scotia. Yeah, I know, obvious joke. He said this in front of people with cameras rolling and reporters in the room.
I don't know many Nova Scotians that grow up thinking, boy, I hope I make minimum wage when I grow up. That's not the way people think. They want real jobs.
He apologized for this later on, but personally, I don't believe him. The apology, I mean. I totally believe he thinks minimum wage workers aren't real workers. It would make sense if his name was Tim Horton for the context of this video, because a corporation would be against increasing the minimum wage. Tim Houston is supposed to be acting in the best interests of Nova Scotians. Nova Scotians? Is it? Nova Scotiers? Yeah. Not corporations owned by Brazilian investment firms. Oh, right. In case you didn't know, Tim Hortons isn't a Canadian company. Hasn't been since 2014. Keep that in mind next time politicians use Timmies to push Canadian culture. Did you know the minimum wage in Nova Scotia is only $12.95 an hour? And I thought Ontario's Conservative Premier was bad. He is. Doug is horrible. Seriously, are the Conservative premiers in a competition to see who can hurt the most folks while making the most profit? $12.95 is not enough to afford the basics of life. And when you can't afford the basics, it means you're cutting back on things you need. Maybe even things like an education that could help folks get better paying jobs, or medications that would allow folks to get back on their feet. He said no one wanted to grow up and work for minimum wage jobs. Some minimum wage jobs are great and ideal for different people, but no one wants to work for poverty wages. If they could find better paying jobs, they would take them. But the way our system is designed, it's nearly impossible to move beyond poverty once you're there. Most people don't live with poverty by choice. Companies won't pay more than the minimum wage if they don't have to, and the government controls what that minimum wage is. And yet here's another privileged white man telling people who've never had anything close to the advantages he's had that the work they do isn't real work, even though they put in more hours than him and are mentally and physically strained far more than he's ever been. Houston is free to be honest about his feelings because Nova Scotia's election was earlier this year, so he has 3 more years before he has to pretend to have levels of empathy that puts him in the category of being human. If he had any more silver spoons up his ass, he'd never be able to go swimming because the weight of them would cause him to sink to the bottom. We can't keep electing people like Justin, Tim, and Doug into office. If there are no better options in your area, help look for someone with a heart who is willing to step up and support them every step of the way. All of us have something to contribute to our communities. Get informed, get involved. So, to put all of this into a box, CERB keeps trending because more people have realized guaranteed livable income is beneficial to our society and quality of life. It frees us from being forced to work for poverty wages. We now know the government can do this, but is choosing not to. We can't even get something as small as increasing the payments for folks with disabilities receive so that we can cover rent and food. Corporations will continue to push back against a guaranteed livable income because they rely on poverty wages to make high profits. The federal liberals suck. Conservatives' premiers suck. They both put the wants of corporations over the needs of people. My like button is feeling a bit lonely. Click on it to make it feel better. I think my comment section is broken. Leave some words there so I can find out. And follow me on Twitter where I send out tweets. If you can, please become a patron. Link in the description box below. And a special thanks to those of you who already have. Wait, I'm missing something. Right, subscribe to my channel. And there is something else. The big announcement! I've reached over 1,000 subscribers! Yay! Yeah, there's no music. Just imagine this is an awesome celebration song. Celebration song. I don't know. This means live streams will be coming as soon as I can figure out how. I've already put some work into it. Just wait. You'll be able to get my hot takes on things like polyamory, online discourse, and cheese. Thank you so much for all of your support. A special thanks to the person who I am the majority report during my zombie attack last Wednesday to give me a shout out. It's what pushed me over the top. I was actually on hold to the majority report at the time. I wanted to get through so I could thank the MR community for all of their wonderful support. And when I heard Sam read the IM, I nearly dropped my phone. It was super, super sweet of them. I don't know if they want me to publicly say who they are. I know I would feel weird about it, but just in case they're cool with it, I've hidden their Twitter handle somewhere in this video. Or did I? Only one way to find out. Rewatch this video over and over again until you find it or until you're confident it's not there. Salut, à la prochaine. Thank you for watching and stay tuned. I'm Sandy, wishing your tomorrow is better than your today. 77 billion on 88 fighter jets. 77 billion on 88 77 billion for 88 fighter jets. I can speak. Jets to jets.